My name is Joel Cuthbert. I work over at the Arapahoe County Assessor's Office. I'm a big fan of being able to share information, and over the years I've gotten to know a number of you, and to be able to help myself, to be able to help you guys. I think we're all on the same page, right? We can all make each other better. What works for me might not necessarily work for you, vice versa. And however, I know that I try to learn from my own mistakes. It's also helpful to learn from other people's mistakes, and the way that we can share this back and forth. I think it's just a fun opportunity that we have, and it's pretty neat to see, close to 25, 30 people want to participate in something like this. So thank you all for showing up. We're going to be here and we're going to be talking about possessory interest and hangar valuation. With that, there are a couple items that I'd like to discuss that was in the invite, and we'll be going over essentially 5 different questions or topics. How you're valuing hangars. Are you typically maxed out on depreciation if you're doing it via cost? Do you have any sales of hangars? And if so, can you please include them as a spreadsheet, which I've been able to put all in one document, and I'm going to share with everybody. How are you handling possessory interest in land at your airports? And how are you tracking possessory interest of non-commercial uses, i.e. if an owner has their own plane for private uses? I've also have Michael Kruger from the DPT. I'm not sure, let's see if he's on. He is on. So I've just asked him to share a couple things with us if we have any questions. I mean, he's sort of the expert when it comes to that, and it's really nice to be able to have him here to be able to share, get his thoughts on how the DPT views it, how the ARL is instructing us, and to go from there. Now that we're done with that, I would just like to be able to introduce ourselves. Not everybody's familiar with everybody here. We have a lot of new faces, which is great. And I have just a list alphabetically by county. So I'm just going to call out the county. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and let's see, maybe tell us an interesting fact about yourself. If you don't find yourself too interesting, don't worry, you don't have to say anything. It's just to help us get to know you a little bit better. So I'll go ahead and start. Anybody from Arapahoe County after me can go. My name is Joel Cuthbert. Once again, a fun fact for myself is I like to take my daughters out on daddy-daughter dates, and we get pedicures. And so if you see me at CATA at the spa or something like that, you'll most likely see me with orange and blue Bronco colored toenails. I think I see Stephanie. Go ahead and chime in if you'd like.
Yeah, my name is Stephanie Sanchez. I do the industrial properties in Arapahoe County. Interest.
Beverly, are you there?
Yes, I'm Beverly Reynolds, and I'm the data collector for the commercial department at Arapahoe County.
And Julie, are you there?
Oh, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. I'm new to the commercial department. Fun fact, gosh, I don't know. I'm going to pass on that one, Joel.
That's fine.
Okay.
Julie's, a fun fact about Julie is she just got her certified residential license. She passed with flying colors, and super proud of her for doing something like that. That's a great feat to be able to do that.
Thanks, Joel.
Do we have anybody else? Is Ashlyn on? No worries. Let's go to Adams County. Travis, you want to start us off?
Get my mic to work. Travis Rogers, the supervisor over the commercial division in Adams County. We don't have a lot of information on PI. I think this round is going to be the first time we really tackle it. So I am ears wide open for all the help I can get on this. Interesting fact about me, I'm super awesome. I guess that's just the way it is.
Is there anyone else from your team joining us today, Travis?
No, they are in meetings right now, so I am the secretary.
Okay, cool. Well, Boulder County then.
Hi, I'm Jennifer England. I'm a commercial appraiser. I've been with the county for 5 years. I can't think of anything interesting on the spot, so I'm gonna pass on that right now. Brian is here, but he was having issues with his speakers, so I don't know if he got those fixed. So I'll see if he hops on, then we'll know the answer to that.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Broomfield.
Micah,
You
can you hear me? Joel? Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Bill Stillman, commercial appraiser at Broomfield. Been doing this a long time, roughly about 40 years. And I've been working at Jeffco and Broomfield. In Broomfield, we have roughly about 15 PI accounts, some at the airport. And a fun fact is that I'm close to retirement.
Great. Anyone from Denver there?
Hey Joel, Josh Bushner and John Norloff are on.
Cool. You guys have any fun facts about yourselves?
No, I'm not a fun person.
Fair enough. Josh was my boss over at Denver County. He was one of my favorite. He's an amazing guy, and he actually just got his certified general in this last year too. And I loved my time over there at Denver, working with both Josh and John. They're amazing guys.
You don't have to suck up anymore, Joel. I appreciate it.
Well, you know, if I suck up more, maybe you'll buy me a beer next time at Cabot. No. Anyone from Douglas County on?
Yeah, I'm Toby Damish, Deputy Assessor, been here a long time, and I guess I'm the guy responsible for the whole rare air case. If not like that's any fun, but it's the truth.
Thanks, Toby. It's all your fault, and but still, thank you. El Paso.
Mark Flucher, Deputy Assessor, and Toby, I would not have admitted to that, but it's all good. Kim and Tom are going to speak next, and they really handle our PI and hangars. So my only interesting fact is my number one job is giving my dogs cookies according to them.
Cool. Thank you, Mark.
I'm Kim Atwell. I have Tom Payne here with me. Mark is right. He does giving treats to his dogs. That's the best thing he does. And I handled the PI, and then Tom does hangars. And I carried that over when I was in the commercial department with Tom. Now I do sales analysis and the PI. I don't really have any fun facts. I have 2 grandkids that I spend a lot of time with. I don't know. Tom, do you have anything fun? Matthew, did you want to get in and say hi too? Matthew is our chief appraiser, so he was going to join in on this too. But Tom's an interesting guy.
I like fly fishing. That's probably about it.
Okay, Jefferson County.
Hi, I'm Keiko Fontana. I'm the commercial and land manager here. I've been here for about 8 years. Fun fact is my given name's Catherine, but most people I know call me Keiko, and I answer to either of them. My parents were living in Japan when I was born, and that's how I got the nickname. So it's nice to meet all of you.
Okay, Larimer County.
Okay, I think I'm the only one. My name is Hannah Armfield. I've been with Larimer County for 4 years. I'm pretty new to PI and everything, so I'm just kind of the newbie getting trained on the whole process. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Hannah. Mesa County. Looks like you have a whole team on there. That's great. Oh, you guys are still on mute. There you go. Looks like maybe your guys' mic isn't working because I see some typing going on. Thanks for listening in. I think if I can make some quick introduction, I think we have David Metzger on the top there. I'm guessing Taylor and Matthew are there as well. Looks like a fourth person. So thanks all for there on the western slope there, and it's great to have you guys on, and thank you for participating. Weld County.
Good morning again, Joel. Tim Reddick with Weld County. I also have in the room with me Cody Gable with Weld County. Cody's our newest appraiser. He's been with us for a little over a month now. I've been with Weld County for 3 years. I have no responsibilities whatsoever here. And see, fun fact about me, during the summer, you can find me on the lake camping on the boat with my kiddos. Cody?
I'm Cody. Fun fact about me, I'm not here, I'm farming and I'm an auctioneer on the side.
I know Sue's on with us as well. Sue shouldn't be here. She's on vacation, but she decided to join us anyway.
Yes, good morning. I'm here. I'm in Illinois for my daughter's wedding this weekend. That will be my fun fact. I'm in Illinois for my daughter's wedding and spending time with my granddaughter.
Great. And Michael, you can top us off or finish us out.
Yeah, so I'm here. I'm on a new laptop, so my camera isn't working at the moment. So I'll try to get that resolved. But Michael Kruger with the division. I am the main PI person, although if I'm ever unavailable, Ruth Dane is my backup on that. A lot of you know Ruth. She worked in Boulder County for a while. Interesting fact about myself. I don't really know anything. I just got back from Texas. It was hot, but it was fun. Kids had fun. So thanks.
Oh, well, wow. It's a pretty good turnout. Again, thank you all for coming. I'm going to be hopefully it won't be me talking. I'm hoping that you guys can participate and we can bounce ideas off of each other. And I'm just going to try to steer us in the right direction, keep us on task. We'll see what happens. I don't have any idea, but I know we've done things like this in the past and it's always been good. So thanks again. So does anybody know? I'm trying to do things in Teams right now. I want to share the Excel document with you guys. And for some reason, I can't find out a way to share a document. Does anybody know how to do that in Teams really quick?
Should be on that top ribbon next to share or next to your leave button. Big red button and there's a share right next to it.
Okay, so I'm just going to share and then maybe you guys can walk me through it. Because I'm not seeing it right now. So I have all of these.
Joel, if you go back to the main chat window, there's in the other teams, there should like on my chat list, there's possessory interest and you can put it right in there.
Okay.
Yeah, there. You should be able to.
Files.
Yeah.
Share. So I'm hoping this comes up in the chat for you guys.
Yep.
You guys got it? Okay. So I'm just gonna share from my computer here. I apologize if I'm sharing your guys' information, but this is just information so we can call each other, email each other, help each other out. This is sort of the attendees list here. Weld County put together a list of their sales that we can sort of walk through and discuss. They have Greeley Airport, Erie hangar sales here, and then farther down, Fort Lupton. Mesa County has a list of their sales. Again, this is just a lot of it's raw data. So I've just tried to piece it together in one document so we can all take a look and see. And if anybody else gets inspired to send me their documentation, I'll go ahead and include it in this document one more time and then send it out probably next week if you guys wouldn't mind sending me any type of hangar sales that you may have. This is ours for Arapahoe County. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then some that I just found for Douglas County. They don't have a ton, but this is just something that I found on CoStar. And then an important thing, if you guys don't have the ARL on this links tab, to download the latest version of ARL Volume 3, you can go to this link here. You will see it on this is their website. And then you can just left click on here and you can pull it up this way, or you can download it to wherever you're at. And this is sort of what we have to go by. Not only the Colorado revised statutes, but the ARL, which is more or less an interpretation of a lot of the laws and the rules that we have to follow. So we're going to be reviewing a little bit of that today, maybe picking Michael Kruger's brain a little bit more, and we'll go from there. Let's see. Yep, that's good with that. So I think the first question was, how are you guys valuing hangars? And just as a start for Arapahoe County, I'll go ahead and sort of give an example. And again, if every county can sort of chime in on how you guys are doing it, I'm going to stop sharing here. Just to get an idea of seeing if the way that we're doing it is the right way or the wrong way, or is it like how everybody else is doing it? It helps me feel better if everybody's doing it on an income approach and we're not doing it on an income approach, which I don't think anybody is, to maybe give us a glimpse in how you guys are doing that. So for us, for Arapahoe County, just to give a little bit of background, for the last 20 years, I don't know if you guys know Ed Bozier, but he made the decision to make all improved hangars exempt. And so for the last 2 decades, all of these property owners have not had to pay taxes, which is, it boggles my mind, but you know, those things happen. As you guys know, sometimes politics gets involved, not necessarily valuation and appraisal. I was told that the Arapahoe County Council at the time advised Ed Bozier, who's the assessor at the time, to do it that way. And we've just been doing it ever since, for the most part. Then Toby decided to throw a wrench in everything, and they had the rare air case, which more or less said that improved parcels, even though they revert back to the airport authority at the end of the lease, they still get valued. And maybe Toby, you can chime in a little bit better and speak to that a little bit more. But it gives a good background into segueing into how we value our improved parcels now.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a way how I can describe that in just a couple of minutes, but because we could talk about it for the whole time frame because the case was complicated. But in the end, well, in the beginning, Douglas County is the far south end of Centennial Airport, which is 95% located in Arapahoe County and one of the busiest general aviation airports in the country, sometimes the busiest. And we have had the unique situation over a couple of decades of having airport pad sites that are not on airport land that are privately owned, where these massive, excellent quality corporate hangars have been built for corporations that have headquarters in the South Metro area. At any rate, there is also one parcel of land owned by the airport and leased to Denver Jet, who is the major developer at the Centennial Airport. And a few years ago, they subleased an acre of that 80-acre property to a company called Rare Air, who turned around and constructed another corporate hangar, but this time on subleased land. And because we have been appraising and assessing and taxing these handful of corporate hangars that are on privately owned land and contiguous and adjacent to the airport, we felt that the only difference with this property really is that they didn't own the land. And so we created, well, to skip a long story, what we ended up with was a case which supported us having an improvements only account for that hangar, which we feel is effectively owned by Rare Air, and a possessory interest account reflecting the larger master lease between Denver Jet and Centennial Airport. So at the as the case moved through the system, the Court of Appeals eventually sided with the state in the way that we listed it, and the Supreme Court denied cert to hear it again. And so as Joel mentioned, that supports the program of, at least in our view, those series of decisions support the decision to list and assess the improvements separately from the land in these airport cases. There have been, I'm sure many of you know, many possessory interest cases related to airports specifically over the years. And two of them were Denver Jet versus Arapahoe County. And those cases are probably, one is 20 years, the other is 30 years old, something like that. They're very old. And those cases landed against Arapahoe County, and most people feel like that's kind of what led to Arapahoe County, in addition to what Joel said, pulling all those hangars off the tax roll. Anyways, our point of view was that we had all these hangars that were on our tax roll since the day they were constructed, and including when they were vacant land. And so when the Rare Air property was built, we thought it was not equitable to keep it off the tax roll. And when that construction started, I called a few of you, many of you, and didn't really find anyone else who was not listing these properties. Although clearly there was some of that, but I didn't talk to anyone who wasn't listing them except for Arapahoe County. So we went ahead and listed it, and that started this big multi-year fight, which ended to where we are now with it. Joel, did they cover what you wanted to, or do you want me to add anything? But any questions?
That's great, Toby. Thank you. Gonna do a quick share screen again before we go, because when I started off in appraising, I had no clue what possessory interest was. So in the ARL 7.69, just wanted to go over a quick definition of what possessory interest is. It says a private property interest in government-owned property, or the right to occupancy and use of any benefit in government-owned property that has been granted under lease, permit, license, concession, contract, or other agreement. So what I found when I heard about possessory interest when I was working at Jeffco, but it's more or less the way that we have to do it is using a discounted cash flow analysis. I was never tasked with that, so I was just like, great, I don't have to worry about it, not my problem. When I was working with Josh and John, they have a lot of possessory interest at DIA. And I was tasked to try to help out with looking at the possessory interests of tenants inside there. So the example at DIA is something along the lines of, if you ever been to any of the concourses, they have restaurants and gift shops and all the things, right? It's government owned. And the government essentially leases those spaces to the tenants. And then for possessory interest, we do a present value of the remaining years left on their lease and convert that to a value, which we as the county get to tax, basically. So now going to Arapahoe County, specifically at the Centennial Airport, the possessory interest for us is, for the most part, all in the land itself. So the Arapahoe County or Centennial Airport leases their land out to FBOs or other hangar owners, and for a certain land rate. And based on however many years, sometimes it's 40 or 50 or more years, we can convert that income stream into a present value and assess a possessory interest tax from there. And my goal, or if anybody else wants to chime in, feel free to do so. But I sort of wanted, not everybody is familiar with possessory interest. I wasn't until I got thrown into it. Thanks, Josh and John. But one of my goals in life when I first moved here to Colorado is I told my wife, I'm going to appraise DIA one day. And well, I didn't get to appraise the whole thing. I got that chance to be able to do that. So I'm also thankful for Josh and John to allowing myself to fulfill one of my goals that I've always wanted to do. So Arapahoe County, because we had none of our hangars as improvement only with no values, we went through with my predecessor, Kat Dowling, who many of you may know. She took on the task of let's get everything as best we can into our CAM system and valued correctly, or just valued itself. And sometimes we're gonna have corrections that we need to make later. So the way that the easiest way we determined to do that, separating out the land, is just go with Marshall and Swift. And so I just wanted to share with you quickly what Marshall and Swift looks like from the book side. So I'm gonna switch to here and.
Hey, Joel, real quick, are you gonna be able to email us these documents you're going over?
Yeah, I put them in chat, but I can email them to you after done here. Yeah.
If they're in the chat, I'll see if I can find them. Thanks.
Okay. Oh, I don't have the ARL. That's in the link that I have here in the Excel document that I have in the ARL, because it's just a little bit on the large side. I'm just going to let you guys download it yourselves. And then the Marshall and Swift, I just have for here, this is section 14. I can send that also in an email within the next week once I get all the sales from everybody as well. But I just wanted to highlight some of the things here in Marshall and Swift. Thanks for bringing that up, Travis, and I'll make sure to get all these documents to every single one of you as well. So usually when I'm looking at Marshall and Swift, I take a look at this is sort of the first page of every section and try to look at what the occupancies are and then how it's described. And then I'm also looking at the pictures that are in here. Now, a lot of these pictures are before I was even born. So a lot of these pictures are very dated, but if we try to go here to hangars, okay. So a lot of the hangars at my airport sort of look like either this one here, they look like this one here, average class C T hangar, maybe something like this, average class S. And for every county, it's going to be different, right? But as the assessor's office, one of our jobs is to properly classify each property. And so that's on us to be able to do that. I'm going to switch to now, let's see, this page. Here we go. So there are 3 different classifications for hangars in Marshall and Swift. There's the maintenance hangar, which in our CAMA system, we have it as number 329. So it just makes a reference directly to Marshall and Swift here. Storage hangar is 328. And then on the following page is T hangars. And so usually, I mean, a lot of these, they're just metal boxes, right? And they're just storage units for airplanes. But some of these are, like Toby mentioned, executive hangars with really nice office spaces and entertainment spaces that have tens of millions of dollars worth of jets stored in. So I'm curious to see sort of if you guys use Marshall and Swift, how do you do that? So yeah, so that's page 29 of section 14 and 30. And so that's basically what we've done to value the hangars for Arapahoe County. And we used CAMA directly to, or CAMA is our software to directly value each of these hangars on a mass scale. Again, almost every person at the airport, they went from paying no taxes at Centennial Airport in Arapahoe County to now having to pay taxes. We have a lot of very upset people. And, you know, going from 0 to paying $10,000 or $100,000. That's a pretty big jump. So almost everybody has appealed here at Arapahoe County. But one of the things that selfishly of putting this together is so I can say, look, I've talked with 11 other counties and they're doing it the exact same way as we are. Every single one of them are valuing their hangars. There's no way that we should be, Arapahoe County, valuing or having these properties be exempt. So that's sort of my own selfish, but this is a great way to, if anybody else is experiencing that, to be able to share those types of opportunities. So if I can just go down the county list one more time, if you guys can just say how, very briefly, how you guys are valuing hangars, it would be greatly appreciated, and we can sort of start any type of dialogue along with that. So I'm going to go ahead and not share my screen anymore, and we'll start with Travis over at Adams County.
This is gonna be the first year we're doing hangars, so we don't have an established practice or technique or method or even a complete understanding of exactly how to tackle this burden. So yeah, all the help anyone's willing to give, the advice, document share, anything like that. I'm going to have to be training everybody here on how exactly to do this. So yeah, I need help because we don't have a plan.
Well, that's cool. So do you even have hangars document or any of the information, and you have
Yeah.
parcel numbers for the hangars.
So we've got the leases. We've got the leases and the subleases and those subleases and those subleases, subleases and those subleases, subleases. But they're supposed to be valued every year. The possessory interest is supposed to be valued every year, to my understanding, and they have not been valuing them. We've basically been doing enough to get by the auditor. So we've got to make that correction immediately.
Okay, so I think you bring up an important fact of separating out possessory interest of the land, which is good, and which I think you guys are trying to do, but also we need to value the improvements, which is a whole nother ball of wax. And so it sounds to me like Adams County is not doing both of those currently. Is that my understanding, Travis?
They haven't been taxed properly, and I don't know how long.
Well, I mean, that's what they hired you for, right? And get things figured out, and you have a fun task in front of you, just like sort of what got dumped into my lap too. So good luck with that, and hopefully we can do this. Toby, you have your hand raised. Why don't you chime in?
Yeah, I just want to say I think there's multiple issues that go hand in hand here, and I'd be curious to see how everyone is not only just valuing the improvement, the hangar improvement, you would approach, as you've talked about, Joel, but how are they dealing with the possessory interest of the land in these cases? And I'll just start by saying, in the case of Rare Air, there is, again, a 70-acre property which is leased from the airport authority to a master real estate developer for the airport, who really has the rights, all the development rights, well, most of them, for Centennial Airport. And they have subleased, as Travis mentioned, to, although there's just one child lease, to Rare Air about 1.5 acres of that. And on that 1.5 acres, again, Rare Air constructed improvements. So we have 3 accounts in our system that represents all of that property interest. Now, in terms of the possessory interest, what we have done due to the original Denver Jet v. Arapahoe County cases is we've used the lease rate established by the lease to calculate a value for the possessory interest of the land for only that 1.5 acres, meaning the remaining 60-some acres don't have any value associated to them. And one of those 2 unfortunate Denver Jet cases from many years ago, and I don't recall whether it was Court of Appeals or which court it was, declared that it's really only the portion of the lease which is usable and completely controlled by the tenant where value can be assigned. And that was an interesting case, because it was on a specific property on the airport, an FBO, a real FBO, not just a hangar, where there's a restaurant, fuel services, and multiple tenants, and it's a very public building. Basically, imagine a mini DIA is what this one building is that was part of the court case. So at any rate, we're not pushing the bar or challenging that case with respect to this property, but we don't feel like we're doing this correctly. In other words, I believe the intent of the law is that we should be calculating a possessory interest on this entire 70-acre property, even though 99% of it is raw land. And Denver Jet disagrees, and they would take us all the way up to the Supreme Court if we took that approach. And we might do that someday. We've got to get all of our ducks in a row as a county, including the commissioners and the attorney's office, and discuss whether we're ever going to take that approach. But as of today, we got the 70-acre property, and only 1 acre or 2 are assessed, and they're assessed using the lease rate indicated on the original master lease contract. No, I'm sorry, the sublease, which arguably is not a market land lease because it's frankly below market at like 30 some cents a foot or something like that. As for the hangar, we are appraising that using the cost approach as we are with all of our hangars, and they're getting regular martial depreciation. We're not assigning any obsolescence or any market adjustment to that. And although that used to work, as the commercial real estate market has advanced in the past few years, our values are well under sale prices now. So we're gonna have to reevaluate how we appraise these properties, not just rare air, but the ones on private property in Douglas County.
Thank you, Toby. Does anybody want to speak to that? I have something, but if anybody has anything off the top of their head, looks like Kim and Tom.
Yeah. We have two airports primarily here that aren't military. One of them is a private airport, and we're valuing the improvements at the private airport pretty much on cost, depending on how many sales we have in a given base period. So if we have enough sales, we had a similar problem where applying depreciation every year had those values so far below sale prices, we couldn't bump them up. But over the last couple of reappraisals, we have started comparing the cost to the sales and escalating those values forward to be more reflective of the sale price at that airport. At Colorado Springs Airport, most of those hangars are valued on cost and are on a possessory interest parcel. We've started making those corrections over the years too.
And also building in escalations in the leases for the lease rate when they make amendments to the lease, and also to allow or to account for CPI increases as well.
So to follow up with that, Kim, is it Kim or Kimberly?
Just Kim.
Okay, Kim. So if that lease that you're using in place does not have an escalation, typically you're just automatically inputting that to get your PI value?
We're using the lease amount, and then that gets automatically input, but a majority of our leases do have escalated increases every 3, 5, 10 years for both CPI and lease amount. Great. And so we've kind of reviewed that over the last year. And one thing I was going to ask Michael Kruger, I'm glad he's with us today. There's one that I'm kind of going back and forth with at the Colorado Springs Airport. And I was unsure with the way we have it set up. We have unimproved possessory interest account and then improved, because typically those lease amounts are different. And so they'll get two bills to account for both of those. And one in particular has an additional amount they just called it a building rate. And I didn't know how to apply that, if that should be included in a lease amount when we're doing that, or if that's something irrelevant, or how to handle that.
Oh, go ahead, Michael.
I was going to say, it depends on what that really represents. It's hard to know just from that descriptor. If it really is part of the possessory interest, then yeah, you would include it. But one way to kind of double check that is see if it pushes it above your other lease rates, because then that might be an indicator that it's really not tied to the PI and it's some sort of other reimbursement or fee that they're paying. But you'd have to probably ask more questions. I don't know if anyone else has seen stuff like that.
Okay.
I have, and I think Kim and I have sort of talked a little bit offline about this. But after review of tons of leases, and just correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, but I've seen leases that have, let's say, 1 acre is the tenant is leasing 1 acre from a larger entity, and 3/4 of the acre is just for unimproved land or the runway, And then the other quarter of the acre is actually for the building envelope in which it sits. So all of that is for the land itself. It's just 2 rental rates. So let's say the unapproved might be 10 cents a square foot, but the building improvement might be 50%, or I'm sorry, 50 cents a square foot. So the total aggregate would be the land rental rate on an annual basis, but they separate that out specifically in the lease. So, and on a whole nother side of things, I think one of the arguments that I've seen is some property owners are saying, no. The total rental rate that I'm paying on the land includes me renting the improvements as well. And that's an easily debunked argument because the cost to build a property like that wouldn't come close to whatever the rental rate for their lease is. So there's ways around that, and I can go into deeper detail with any of you guys if you want to talk about it a little bit more offline. But I don't know if any of you guys have seen something like that in the leases that you have. I know Larimer County, Jeffco, and Broomfield have similar type situations. If you've seen anything like that, if you guys would like to chime in at all.
Joel? This is Bill. Can I chime in on Broomfield? Okay. We have Ball Corporation has a master lease with Jefferson County, and there's about 80 acres, 6 account numbers. 3 account numbers are vacant land, and it is a flat rate for 10 years. So we use whatever they're paying the market rate. And then for the improvements, there's 3 accounts that are improved. And they had a big, we used the Marshall and Swift, but they had a big, it was an office satellite cleaning building. It was $110 million property that just got completed. But we used the Marshall and Swift, and we didn't even hit 50 million. So, but we tried, and they didn't appeal. But that's what we have at our port. We do not have any hangars in the Broomfield side. They're all in Jeffco.
Yeah, so over at Boulder County, we're kind of doing the same stuff as you are. Joel, sounds like Arapahoe County. Possessory interest, basically just valuing the paper and really kind of following exactly what they have on those as much as we can. We've been pretty lucky with getting actual data from a lot of them. So we do have a history on those lease rates. So we're getting pretty close on that stuff. As far as hangars, same stuff. Marshall, kind of all day, which I'm really starting to disagree with more and more as we're seeing sales out there, which it sounds like everybody kind of is, right? Those Marshall values just aren't getting there. And these things are definitely starting to trade. And we do have some sales over in Boulder County we can share with you guys as well. But we're not getting close. It's depreciation problems. It's Marshall doesn't keep up with our markets. Even on refinements, having water heat, sewer, things like that just don't really get there. But it's definitely time to revisit some of that, I think, and really take a look at those sales because, they also in Boulder, they kind of tend to kind of pack up and appeal those hangars all together and really kind of come after us that way, right? So, and they all come with the same thing, the same arguments. And I kind of feel like next time around, I might have enough data to go, you guys might need to just back off a little, on that pressure. So.
Yeah.
Hey,
Thanks
Joel.
Go ahead.
I didn't think I was going to get that huge feedback, I guess.
Turn it up on there though.
Can you hear me now at all?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Better.
Much better.
Right.
Oh.
There you go. Okay.
Joel, this is Matthew Kramer with Mesa County. And I get, as for the leases, I just get one large spreadsheet from the airport And most of the leases, yes, are 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and they adjust every, they might not adjust for the length of the lease, but they're going to adjust for the CPI every single year. And so then I adjust there. And as to valuing the hangars itself, we use sales and cost, but mainly sales. And that's what we're doing. So.
Yeah, except for the large maintenance hangars, which we don't get any sales in. We've adjusted Marshall and Swift depreciation in our CAMA system to because old properties were, you know, throughout the entire industrial and commercial classes were getting overly depreciated, and they weren't accurately valued. So we've changed the depreciation from Marshall and Swift to our own design. And of course, we update effective year every 2-4 years usually.
Is there a methodology that you apply to adjust your depreciation from age life and Marshall and Swift to whatever it is you're using? I mean, you know, effective age is kind of subjective sometimes, but I was just wondering if you have something we could replicate. I have the same issue with other property types that are principally valued on cost, and that might be helpful to me.
Can always use the POA method. Pull out of.
So thanks for sharing. I've actually been struggling with this as well, because I would say a good majority of our buildings are maxed out at 80% depreciation physically. And that's because the life of a hangar is usually 20 to 30 years max. And some of these hangars have been around for 40 years. So I've been trying to brainstorm ways of, what you're talking about, Tom, and sort of what David is sort of pointing towards. And I think, and I'm just tossing this out here, instead of looking at effective age, maybe look at it from a different aspect of what's the remaining economic life of this property. And then we can apply back into the proper depreciation, because it's just like, so at Denver, right? There's tons of 100-plus-year-old properties. They are fully maxed out if you're looking at actual age or effective age. But they're still, I mean, they more than doubled their economic life over 100 years of age. So we can't just automatically do something like that.
Hey, Joel, just an FYI, Denver overrides our depreciation, so we actually don't let it go below a certain amount. I want to say it was maybe 50%. Okay. Just because, to our mind, if a building is still standing in Denver and it's still being used, it's not going to be depreciated that much. They've given it some level of care and attention to where it's not going to go that low. So maybe something to consider on how low you will actually depreciate a hangar, because we all know they don't want that hangar to collapse on that pretty plane of theirs.
Yeah, and I mean, I've talked with Marshall Swift a number of times that at that 80% depreciation, that's pretty much salvage value for what they can get back for their building if they want. So I'm with you guys. I think we're over depreciating a lot of our properties by a large margin, and just to be aware of that. I think I saw Brian Floyd's hand raised, and I think Tom Payne wanted to chime in too. So let's start with Brian.
Yeah, you just sparked something, Joel. I was thinking, like in Boulder County, we have so many hangars that are that we have both possessories and hangars in the same spot, right? So if you could find buildings that are of a typical age and figure out what those remaining lease terms, I mean, that could be a way to start establishing what that remaining economic life is, right? If they're built the same and now we know that part of them are leased for 10, 15, 20 years out into the future, that might be a good way to, rein that back in, right? Because they're going to show the same depreciation off that age life if we can't prove that there's been some permits on there or something that's cured some of that deferred maintenance or things over the years. So just having that remaining lease term might be, I don't know. I've never seen anybody do anything like that before, but maybe some evidence at least that there's still some additional life in those buildings.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Brian. Tom?
Yeah, I like that too, especially for the hangar properties. And this is just kind of aside because of appeals going on right now, but deferred maintenance, whether it's a hangar or a convenience store, for example, the defending the depreciation amount using something other than Marshall and Swift at appeal or CBOE or at the BAA. I just have a hard time with it. I like the economic life idea, extending that based on maybe the year built and where we are today. We know this still has utility today. That's a good one. I like the lease thing on hangars particularly. But if anybody had any other ideas on other property types and I guess year built again might be a good way to go with something other than that. In terms of being able to defend it in a meaningful way.
Yeah, not just toss out an arbitrary number.
We use basically a best fit for valuations of certain age properties, and that determined our depreciation schedule. So we saw that new properties were overvalued, old properties were way undervalued. And so instead of our curve being a Marshall and Swift, it's gone, flatter, I guess, from that. And it's provable because we're doing the best fit of income and expenses and income approach and sales approach. And it, clearly is valuing the properties more correct than Marshall and Swift.
Yeah, when we get into talking about our sales, I'd like to show you guys some of the things that I'm seeing out of Arapahoe County. I think the disconnect is because of how we have to follow the state statutes, is we have to separate the land from the improvements. And so we're getting, in my opinion, severely undervalued possessory interest values because we're basing the income stream from the original base lease. At least that's how we're doing it in Arapahoe County. So that's sometimes 3 cents a square foot, where the market is actually showing 50 cents a square foot. So I wonder if Michael can chime in to see what the DPT's opinion, or what your opinion, Michael, is. Should we be looking at the income stream of the sublease of the sublease of the sublease to the most current tenant that is leasing that land? Or should we be looking at it based on the original full picture? In like Toby's example, the 60-acre parcel, should we be valuing it based on that lease rate? And I know, sorry, I'm sort of mixing your words, Toby. I think you guys, Douglas County, lease uses the possessory interest rate based on that 1.5 acres. We don't do it that way. And I'm just curious to see, after Michael explains sort of what his explanation would be, if any of you guys also, other counties do it that way as well.
Yeah, so there's kind of two issues that are obviously related. So the first one is who is the PI holder, and then the second one is how do you value it. So our view has always been that whoever has the original agreement with the tax exempt entity is the holder of the possessory interest. So in the Rare Air example, Rare Air was not the PI holder; it was Denver Jet Center. And then, of course, Rare Air was subleasing from Denver Jet, but the PI was between the Airport Authority and Denver Jet and not the Airport Authority and Rare Air. That's that piece. But from a valuation perspective, the one helpful thing in the statute is that it does say that you can use market rent. And so if the original agreement was not at market, you can substitute market rent, and that's allowed under the statute. And so that's one benefit of the statute, even though the statute, kind of ties our hands a little bit in terms of doing renewal options and things like that. At least it does say that you can use market rent. So to your example, if that original, was 3 cents or something like that, and that's clearly not market anymore, you can update that rental rate. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what I'm potentially looking at in the future. It might not be a 2023 thing for Arapahoe County, but it might be a 2025 thing. This is already a monster in itself, and it's not easy. And again, if we're talking about raising the possessory interest to market rates, going from 3 cents to 50 cents, that's very extreme difference. And before I do something like that, I would want to be bulletproof. I might raise it to 10 cents instead of 50 cents as a precautionary, like, hey, don't get yourself in trouble, because I've done that before. I've raised the value 400% on self-storage facilities, and that pissed off a lot of people, but I wasn't wrong, and I was able to back it up. Let's see. Does anybody else want to chime in with how their county are valuing hangars and dovetailing that into possessory interest for their county?
I can talk a little bit about Weld. Since 17, we've been valuing the Greeley Weld County Airport at market because we've had enough sales. And every time there's a new, they don't do subleases out there for their possessory interest, they write new leases. So whenever there's a new lease written, the airport does provide that to us. So we have possessory interest on the restaurant, on the fuel stations, on some hangars that the airport owns, but most of the possessory interest is on pad sites under the hangars. And we use the discounted cash flow.
Joe, I was just going to tell you on the Ball Corporation, we were lucky because the 10-year lease expired in 2019, so we just used market rent for the following years, which was about $30,000 an acre.
I have a question for Susan. When you have a building that is owned by the airport, a hangar that's owned by the airport, how are you valuing that? Are you using the lease amount?
We are using the lease amount.
Okay.
Yeah, so Kimberly, what you described is if the building is owned by the airport itself as a government entity, and they choose to lease that to another tenant specifically, that would be classified as a possessory interest of the improvement itself. Whereas I think in most cases, that's not how it works. There are definitely cases in how you describe it. And again, that's an argument that I see quite a bit. Sort of sidestepping that is the tenant built the building with their own money. They paid, let's say, $10 million to build this hangar. But at the end of the day, once their land lease ends, then it reverts back to the airport authority. So the airport authority doesn't technically own it. right now. But the leasehold interest is with that tenant. So my response to their argument is, yeah, but you can buy or you can sell your property at any time. You get tax benefits where you get a write-off depreciation. You own it. There's title to the property in that company's name. It's not in the airport authority's name. And we also have to consider that we have a prudent ownership and management of property, right? So let's say you have a 40-year lease and a 40-year lease extension, and you have a $10 million building. The chances are, once that 40-year lease expires, you're not going to let that $10 million revert back to the airport. You're going to re-sign that lease, right? And I mean, unless there's some terrible market conditions or something. But I know at our airport, we're one of the busiest airports, and there's tons of demand for something like that. So I don't see that happening anytime in the near future.
So using Amazon as an example, their larger building that they have out near the airport, they purchased that property, and then they have a distribution center that is on airport that they have a lease with the airport. And with that, I mean, I'm using the annual lease rate to determine the PI for that, and it is a ground lease. But we have a few different leases where it's the land and then it's built into the lease. They have a certain period of time to build a building and the lease amount for those buildings and when it's executed. And then we pick it up at that point in time because they'll do them in phases. But I wanted to make sure that that's how I should be looking at these.
Yeah, so I think I saw something similar to that in Douglas County, where there was I'll just show you guys it really quick. I'm going to share my screen. Toby might be able to speak directly to this in a bit, but I noted, so this, can you guys see this sale here that I'm highlighting? Try to make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah, it's showing.
Okay, so this sale was for a little over $10 million. And on CoStar, it shows it just as a land sale, and this was prior to any building being built. So my assumption was that this was for the land and then the right to build the building. And then it also, that 10.4 million also included sort of the cost it was to actually build the building itself. So Toby might be able to speak to that a little bit more specifically, but I think, Kim, that sort of parallels one of the things that you brought up is you have the original land lease, and then it's up to the tenant to either pay out of pocket themselves to build the building. And if that's the case, then I think the improvement value needs to be valued separately and owned by the tenant itself, if that reverts back to the possessory interest of the landowner. Or if they have some sort of rental agreement to cover the costs. So like a build to suit type property, and the rental rate for that building is specifically done with the, with the airport as the actual owner, but Amazon is leasing that in the build to suit space from that, then that can be classified as a possessory interest. Does that help answer sort of the conundrum that you're in? That's not very typical.
It does, sorry, yeah.
On that case where the improvement is owned by the airport and is considered a possessory interest improvement, are we disregarding cost and market as it relates to the possessory interest value?
I think so, because I think that's what the ARL and the Colorado Revised Statutes tells us to do. You have to do possessory interest a certain way. Michael might be able to speak to that better, but that's my interpretation at least.
So yeah, there's a statute does require the consideration of all three approaches, but it leans heavily on the income approach for PIs, but it doesn't expressly exclude using cost or market. The problem is, of course, doing that on the PI situation when it's an IMPS PI is trying to determine what the value of it is without over assessing it or overvaluing it because they don't have fee simple ownership. So you have to take that into account as well, that you're not going to overvalue it by using the market approach.
I know in Douglas County, we would never in that situation try and use the other two approaches because of the complexity of trying to vet out that it's not fee simple. That's just the leasehold interest. So that's just slippery, especially given the court cases over the years. On the example that Joel showed, that's a really, really unique situation. And I'm curious if anyone else has this. We have a set of pad sites which are adjacent to the airport. The vast majority of airport real estate is on airport land, as you all know. And in fact, you can't, in federal law, you can't even do this anymore for most airports, general aviation airports. You cannot develop land adjacent to the airport that's not on airport. That happened in the Patriot Act or something like that after 9/11. In fact, these properties, this one that sold for $10 million was 2 lots. It's privately owned real estate that's contiguous to the airport that happens to have a taxiway attaching it to the airport. So the land has always been privately owned, taxable, and fee simple, and appraised and assessed in what we think is a normal manner. And so this $10 million sale is a really fascinating sale, and we are getting different answers from the parties on it. So I think we got to be careful on it, because one of the parties is saying it is not including the cost of construction, even though it's $10 million. But yeah, it's a really unique. I'd be curious to know if anyone else has anything like this where there is an airport, there's an aviation facility like a hangar or something like that, which has access to the airport, but isn't actually on it. Because that's what this property is, as well as the 4 or 5 right next to it. And because of that, there's no PI on this property. There's no lease, there's no sublease, there's no airport ownership, or there's no interest by the private real estate developer that's partnered with the airport. Nobody's talking. I'm guessing that answer is no, that no one else. That's it.
This is Tim in Weld County. I believe Larimer County has something like that. Their airport has multiple parcels that are to the east side of the airport that are privately owned land and improvements. And I believe there is hangar space there, as well as taxiway that leads to those hangars. In addition, Amazon's building a new distribution center there, 3.8 million square foot, adjacent to the airport, and I can't imagine they're not going to at some point tie into that airport that is currently growing and looking to expand its operations to service additional carriers. But I don't know if our Larimer County folks want to speak to that at all or not.
That is really interesting that you say that, because the property that Joel showed also has an Amazon, privately owned Amazon parcel that has a distribution facility that just got constructed. And the way after these 2 pad sites, if you will, got purchased, they've rearranged some parcel lines, including on the adjacent airport parcel, which indicates Amazon is trying to get access to the airport, which Centennial Airport has been telling us for some time is no longer lawful. So unless they're grandfathered in because the land and the PD existed before, I don't know, but we're watching it very closely. Yeah, there we go. And you can see that's a much smaller Amazon building than the one you described, sir. Much smaller, but I don't know what it is. A couple 100,000 feet maybe, but they've rearranged some parcel lines, including combining the two pad sites that they purchased. And there's discussion about Amazon with our county wanting to get access to that. And that would, if that's true, might explain this purchase to us a little bit, because all of a sudden that price means something totally different, especially if Amazon's involved in it. So thank you for that. I'll be looking into that a little further for sure.
So this is my shared screen of Douglas County website, which is one of the coolest websites, by the way, Toby. Thanks to Lisa too. But this is the property in question. And as how Toby was describing earlier, this is all private land. This is on Douglas County, but they have private taxiway service here, all the way up here to the runway, which is owned by the airport authority. So it's a very unique situation, and not everybody has that. So yeah, thanks for sharing and making that cool connection to be able to. That's the whole point of this, right? Is so we can sort of share our experiences and say, hey, I have an odd duck. Oh, by the way, Larimer County might have something similar to you. So that's awesome. That's exactly what I'm trying to do this for. So perfect. Wow, we're cooking on time here. Lots of great discussion. I've been really appreciating this. I want to touch on some ARL items really quick. And so I'm just going to share my screen one more time. I apologize for bouncing back and forth. Okay, so this is the 2022 January ARL, and this is more or less the table of contents. I just have a few highlighted items here, and then on the next page, I just want to briefly speak to these. And this has specifically to do with possessory interest. Some of us have been doing this for a long time. Some are beginners and want to sort of figure out how the heck this actually works. So I'm going to just briefly hit on a couple items. If anybody wants to chime in at any time, feel free to interrupt me. And Michael is always here to say, Joel, you don't know what you're talking about. This is what it really means. So please feel free, Michael. So the first item, let me go up to 7.61 in the ARL. And this basically starts out where we're talking about assessment of possessory interests, what we need to do. And then it goes into the legal references. One of the biggest cases that we have as far as direction for valuation of possessory interest is through the Colorado Supreme Court, which is against Vail Associates. And basically they determined a couple things from this. I'm going to scroll down. Basically, there are significant incidents of private ownership where there's three factors: an interest that provides the revenue generating capability to the private owner independent of the government property owner; two, the ability of the possessory interest owner to exclude others from making the same use of the interest; and three, sufficient duration of the possessory interest to realize a private benefit therefrom. So what does that mean? It means that technically, and I struggle with this quite a bit, is if you are a private hangar owner and you don't have any way to generate income, then those are supposed to be exempt, question mark. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's sort of what the statute says and what the case law says. And the reason why I struggle with that is how do we as counties, and I've had this conversation with Michael, how do we as counties keep track of that? I mean, of course, everybody's going to say, oh yeah, there's no way that I run any business or I don't generate any income. I just use it for my private use. And then how does that work with the likes of how we look at property that's like commercial versus, non-residential versus residential, where non-residential property doesn't need to have any type of income producing facts. And so I see it as a group of people that don't have any way, or they don't have to pay their taxes anymore for the possessory interest, if that's the case. So that's one of the things that I struggle with. So now there are more court cases in the ARL that sort of talks about a few more items. I'm going to skip down to 7.67. So this is the Colorado revised statute regarding possessory interest, and that's CRS 39-1-103. If you ever want some good, bedtime reading to make you fall asleep, feel free to read this, but familiarize yourself with it. It's riveting stuff. The next part, 7.69, this is the definition that I went over with you guys. 7.0. Oh yes, so here's something that got brought up, and it talks about an interest that provides a revenue generating capability to the private owner independent of the government property. And then in bold here, it says any use or occupancy of government property by any person, partnership, corporation, limited liability corporation, an LLC, or other legal entity for the purposes of generating revenue from a business or operation. Michael, if I could just have you chime in just to clear things up. I know it's probably not the answer that I'm looking for, but we also want to abide by what the DPT, the direction from the DPT and the ARL is trying to tell us.
Yeah, so there's a caveat at the start, which is that the specific issue here has never been litigated in Colorado in terms of whether or not non-income producing possessory interests are taxable. There's really no good case law specifically on that issue. In other states there are. California, for instance, and California does assess those types of possessory interests. However, and this is where the DPT's interpretation comes in, if you read the Mesa Verde cases, if you read Vail Associates, and you read a couple other cases, Cantina Grill even touches on it a little bit, our view is that what the court meant by capability is not necessarily just the capability. Virtually any possessory interest has the capability of producing revenue, but that's the intention, that it is a business operation. And that's what we think that the court was leaning toward, even though they used some imprecise language. But again, it's never actually been litigated. So there's no final word on that, but that has been our interpretation. And that is what, of course, we say in the ARL as well. So Joel, I know that that's cold comfort there, but that's kind of our take on it. And if anyone else wants to chime in.
Sue, go ahead.
Our airport provides me the list of which properties are possessory interest and which ones are not. And they told me that the individuals, if they have a business, they have to have a different type of insurance, and they have to provide proof of insurance to the airport. And that's when they provide the information to us and we make it a possessory interest account. So I'm not sure if all airports are willing to work with the individual offices like our airport is, but it makes it a whole lot easier.
So in that case, you have private hangars, owned by private individuals that you currently have as exempt than a possessory interest.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Well, I think, Toby, you had your hand raised?
No, it got mentioned, so
Okay.
I don't need to be repetitive, thank you.
So I like that, being able to potentially link it back to insurance. Just know, counties, if you want to go up against it and try to get that thing litigated, probably it's going to be a rough road to travel. It's a lot easier to just do it the way that GPT is telling us. But if I'm reading between the lines here, Michael's saying you can try it, but just know that there might be repercussions from that. So
yeah, and one thing I'll mention too, Joel, and in fact I know we talked about this, but you have to remember too, the airport hangar is a little bit of a unique situation. Really the typical kind of situation that you would think of as being an exempt PI is a private cabin, a residential use cabin on Forest Service land, where they're not renting it out, they're just using it for their own private purposes. And that's clearly, I think we would say that would be exempt. But to your point, this is a little bit different. So if you want to litigate it, yeah, feel free. We will eagerly await the outcome of that, but I'm not sure if it would be successful. Because unfortunately, you can point to the ARL where we say the opposite. So.
Great. Okay. Let me fly through the rest of this ARL. 7.76. Okay, so here's for people who are just new to valuation of possessory interest. This is just the place in the ARL that talks about what we need to do. And basically what we're doing is a type of DCF, or discounted cash flow, where we're taking the income streams going out to however long the lease lasts, and bringing it to a present value of what's going on with the property. In the ARL, if you're unfamiliar with how DCF works, because in most commercial property, we can't use forward-looking projections and valuations. This is in commercial, this is the only way that we're able to, as assessors offices, look at like a DCF or a discounted cash flow. They also do it in subdivision valuation, but from a commercial site valuation standpoint, this is the only way to do it with possessory interest. Let's see, 7.79, next page. So this is a big one because every county is in charge of developing their discount rate when they do their own DCF for properties. And sort of the age-old discount rate is everybody just uses 10. And it doesn't matter. I've never seen anything different. I actually saw something more recently from another county, but everybody just uses 10. But I don't see any backup for that. And I'd just be curious to see if any of you guys do any type of your own discount rate development, because we're also talking about something completely different than if we're doing a discount rate for, let's say, a multi-tenant Class A office building. There's discount rates for that. Now we're talking about possessory interests on land specifically, and those are really hard to be able to find or back into. So does anybody have any idea of how you developed your discount rate, or is it made up? And if so, I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts.
At Douglas County, we use the discount rate that we apply for commercial land subdivisions. And so we start with the annual report that the DPT provides, which has been a range for a number of years. But then we dig in and do our own analysis in developing those subdivision rates. But that's, for commercial subdivisions, and then we just apply that rate at the airport. for what it's worth. And then of course adding the, what do we do? Add the ETR to it or whatever we do.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a little bit, because you also have to do the ETR and then the level of value, which I'm gonna touch on a little bit for
Yeah,
those who are unfamiliar with the process.
So in summary, the result is we don't use 10. We've been ranging between 10 and like 13 or something like that. Or 9 and 13. We've been wavering each reappraisal in that range.
And those of you guys that are unfamiliar with discount rates, usually there's a relationship with how capitalization rates are determined, and then terminal cap rates, and then discount rates. Sort of the easy way to do it is if your cap rate's at 8, then your terminal cap rate's at 9, and your discount rate is at 10. There's a relationship with that. It's not exactly the same at all times, but coming from the fee world, there's a lot of direction towards something like that, and then you can back that up with different types of investment surveys and things like that. Okay, next item. If anybody else like to chime in on discount rate development? Okay, so this is a level of adjustment factor, or LOV. So if any of you guys are familiar with this, the DPT puts out every year sort of their LOV, and in this ARL, it sort of just goes through the steps of how we get to the actual number. So we're doing the net present value of the income stream, steps 1 and 2. Step 3, then we get to, and here's sort of an example. So we're looking at a 4-year income stream with a discount rate at 14%, and you do a DCF, which is you're discounting the cash flows of each year, totaling that up to get to 33,033. So for 2022, our level of value, or LOV, is 0.94. So that we apply 0.94 times this to get to 31,051. And then that will get you to this step 5 here. And that's the actual value of the possessory interest. And that's how we send out our NOVs to property owners. So that's all I have for the ARL portion. I sort of just wanted to briefly go through how possessory interest is done. If you're unfamiliar with it, I know that a lot of our counties sort of have a DCF in Excel set up for each of our accounts. So like for instance, El Paso County, Kim was able to share a really neat DCF. And Kim, if you don't mind me sharing that, I can sort of show it to everybody. I haven't heard anything back, and sorry, I can't, I'm doing other things as far
Sorry, I
as.
gave you a thumbs up. So yeah, go for it.
Okay, thank you. I think it was this one that you sent me. So this is sort of what El Paso's look like, and it's specific to each account. So you'll see here it has multiple years. It has you're factoring in expenses in management. It looks like, and then it calculates all the years here.
What would be the chances that somebody might email me a copy of that so I can make sure that the one we have is working properly?
As long as Kim's okay with it, I wouldn't mind emailing this out to the group. But some of this is property specific with confidential lease information. So before I send that type of stuff out, I just want to ask permission beforehand.
I'm okay with it as long as Mark Flucher's okay with it.
and again, this is to the benefit of us all. And please don't share this with tax agents. I've sent out a number of things over the years. Like for instance, for those of you guys have seen my sales comparison, qualitative versus quantitative analysis. It's a lot of counties are using that a lot more, which is great. Also, I put together a really neat cost approach spreadsheet to do it by the book. Unfortunately, someone shared that with Todd Stevens, and now Todd Stevens is using like verbatim that cost approach, which is great. A little pat on my back. However, he's not using a lot of the important things that actually increase the value. So he's leaving out all the multipliers. He's not applying things like soft costs or entrepreneurial profit. So if you guys ever come across Todd and his team doing something like that, just say, Todd, you're full of crap, and we're not going with what you're saying. Sorry, I digress, but just please keep this in-house with our group here. Don't share with other outside sources. Just be respectful to your colleagues, right? So yeah, this is Kim, I think this is a great sort of, I'm going to blow this up so it's a little bit easier to see. You have a lot of really neat items in here that, again, as appraisers in the assessment world, you really don't see the DCF too often. And you have your effective tax rate in here, so that's already calculating. I'm sure you have some sort of level of value in here somewhere. I didn't, review it 100%, but I think this is a great, up at the top. Oh, here it is. There you go. So this is great. If you're in charge of doing PI, this would be a great start to do it. Especially if you don't have a lot. For me at Arapahoe, I have a lot. So I have something that looks like this, and it just goes through, many PIs, and then I have the income streams going out to way out here to the right into 2060. Let's see, this is the winner, 2079. I'm probably not going to be alive when that happens, but it just goes to show that some of these leases are very long, and it's quite common. So just be aware of how to calculate PIs. If you guys ever have any questions, that's what this list is here for. We can bounce ideas off of each other, and it doesn't always have to be me. I welcome it. I enjoy talking with you guys, but it's great to be able to reach out to other counties and really bounce ideas and methodology off each other. I absolutely love that about working in assessors' offices. Okay, I think that's all I have. Oh, we didn't talk about sales. Wow. So for me, let me show you this one more time. This is Weld County, Mesa County. What's great for Weld County, they have a ton of sales. So, when you're looking at this and you have, let's just highlight this one here. 300,000 sales price, I'm guessing, yeah, at $120 a square foot. And then I think if we go over here, we can take a look at a lot of their information of, okay, what was the value for 2018? What was the value for 2019 in the new year? You guys just bumped it up to whatever the sales are telling you, which is great. I think that's awesome. And there's no argue with that, right? You bought it for 300,000 and you think it's worth 100,000? Come on, let's get with the program here, right? And Weld County can easily argue their case that their mass appraisal value is supported in that. However, not every county has a plethora of sales like Weld County does here, this is awesome. I wish I had this type of information. And I'm not sure if you guys have this problem, but for me, at Centennial Airport, a lot of these transfers happen through bill of sales, which are unrecorded documents. And so, for instance, I got a call from this property owner who sold to a new property owner for $14 million through a bill of sale. Now the seller said, you know, hey, we sold it. Make sure that all the tax bills go to the the buyer, essentially. And this would have never came across our desk because we don't have this type of information. So sometimes I think that what I need to do is establish a better connection with my airport authority to say, hey, if you guys see bills of sale, you need to contact me and give this type of information so we know who the new property owner is. Oh, and by the way, it's super helpful to have this sale at $14 million at $269 a square foot. The disconnect is the county, Arapahoe County, via Marshall and Swift, has it valued at $4.5 million. That blows my mind, right? And this is sort of a newer hangar. And that goes to like what Bill Stolman was talking about, how Ball has a $110 million facility out there that they can barely get to $15 million. I mean, that's more than half of what it was. And then I took a look at what the actual construction cost, because they gave me the construction cost. And if you look up here, the actual construction cost is about 8.5 million. So there's a huge disconnect, in my opinion, from Marshall and Swift value at 4.5 million to the actual construction costs, and then the construction costs to what that actually sells for at 14 million. And it's just something to keep in mind and see if you guys are seeing that. Same thing with my sales. Let me try to get rid of this. Okay, so what I'm seeing here with the actual sales of these properties here is, let's just take this one. It's sold right at the end of the base period at 385,000. However, our Marshall and Swift has it at 164,000. So this sells for twice what we have it in at Marshall and Swift. So there's some type of disconnect here where the market is telling us that the value is way higher than what Marshall and Swift has it in. And maybe that it has something to do with how Arapahoe County, we need to try to look at whatever the depreciation rate is, or apply some sort of market adjustment to the building itself. Because usually what happens is if we're only doing improvements only via the cost approach, it's always going to be a depreciating asset. So as the property gets older, it's going to lower down in value. Problem is we have the land, which is usually the economic indicator in an increasing market. We can't really mess with that because PI, the state statutes regulate us to factor that completely separate. So that's why I think that there's this huge disconnect, and we need to be able to apply some sort of, I don't know, maybe you guys have a good idea of these huge disconnects. Like again, this property here sold for 17.5 million and we have 5.7. Are any of you guys else experiencing things like this?
I've had the very same problem. And typically what I've had to do over the years is trying to move away from cost is wait for those base periods where I actually had a significant amount of sales to use. And I also tried to bump the values of the subject property that's sold as soon as I could, as high as I could, knowing it was going to generate knowing it was going to generate an appeal for that property, but I don't think there is an easy answer other than to just try to incrementally get them there on the years where you have an abundance of evidence to support the change. I'm still not there, and that's probably like 3 or 4 reappraisals, but it's actually maybe not getting better with the way property values are going up, but that's been my attempt.
Yeah, have any of you guys, I've gotten the argument that the remaining years on the land lease has an effect on value. So I've talked to some of these condo owners and I have them in at 165,000 and they bought it for 400,000. And they go, well, because there's only 30 years left remaining on my lease, the property should be worth at least, or at most $100,000. And I'm just like, you just bought it for $400,000. So how can you make that argument? And I'm trying to see where these people are coming from. I think just people who own hangars like to complain, but rich people problems. But have any of you guys experienced anything like that where you're trying to tie in the market value into something with time remaining on leases when it's purchased? Stephanie, go for it.
Well, kind of along the same line, I've heard the argument that, I've only got a very short term. I've only got 1 or 2 years left on my lease. I'm not sure Centennial is going to renew it. Therefore, my building has minimal to no value, even though they've been on a short-term lease for, say, 40 years, Centennial has always renewed their lease. There's nothing to indicate that they wouldn't renew the lease, but, because they don't have that certainty, that's their argument.
Yeah, and I can see that side of the argument, and I've heard that too. And that might be some sort of maybe like functional obsolescence adjustment to bring down the value. My problem is our values are so stinking low already. I think I would apply that to whatever the sales prices are telling me. And I think that would probably be a little bit more accurate if that was the case. I would apply some sort of functional obsolescence adjustment based on 5 or less years remaining on the land lease that is not likely going to get signed based on that $400,000 value rather than the $165,000 value. Anybody else? Well, I think I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much for everybody chiming in, attending, listening. Send me those sales if you have them in the next, so I can get those put together in a package in the Excel, and I'll just ship it out to everybody. I'm also going to put that Marshall and Swift digital package together for that section 14, like Travis asked for. I'm also going to put together the El Paso DCF, how they have it. I think it's super slick. If any of you guys want to share any other information, greatly appreciated. I'm sure even if you don't think anyone else is going to use it, it might be helpful for one county or the other. I think it's great to be able to do these things, have these conversations, and I appreciate all you guys for coming today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel. Well done. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joel.
And it's great seeing all your faces again.
Thanks, Joel.